Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Benaker, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. Lisa, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Lisa, at the beginning of your medical career, you were among the nation's youngest medical directors on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. Can you share with us that experience and what led you to make the transition to become an integrative coach?
That experience was very unique, obviously, something that wasn't expected when I was training to become a doctor, and no one really saw it coming. And it was something that stretched a lot of us. And in particularly, I was working in the Bronx, in the South Bronx, in a particularly underserved area. And so of the United States, sort of the pandemic hit New York first, and of New York, it hit the Bronx first and hardest. And so it's one of those things where you may have experienced in your life, right? Where something comes out of left field that you weren't anticipating, you're not prepared for. Never in a million years could you have expected this to be happening. It wasn't part of the plan, right? And all of a sudden, we were faced with so many life and death decisions in terms of what's the best way to approach it? What do we do? How do we take care of our patients? All these different things. It was a big stressor, obviously, for a lot of people all over the world. And throughout that experience, if we rewind just a little bit in my own personal journey, when I was a resident, so a few years prior to that, I had gone through my own version of sort of being knocked down, my own version of rock bottom, where I was diagnosed with a really rare medical condition myself. I kept pushing and grinding because I, at that time, didn't know any better. And I was just checking off the box of all the things I'm supposed to do, which many of us, I'm sure, can relate to, prioritizing everything and everyone else first, trying to squeeze out as much time as possible to get everything done, including taking care of myself with this rare diagnosis, to the point where I finally depleted myself and got completely burned out and depressed. And it was that point that I started my own personal journey. I had two choices, really. I could either completely give up on life altogether, me who trained to be a doctor and also have a background in clinical psychology, like meant to take care of other people, and all of a sudden I couldn't get out of bed. Like, what? How could this be me? Right? And then either I could give up, or then I could try to find another way. I had to look for answers, right? And so step by step by step, searching for answers outside of my environment, outside of my family, outside of the medical system, even, because I realized that everything in my environment that I had learned up until that point, in terms of my upbringing, even as the daughter of Chinese immigrants that were very poor and trying to make ends meet, all of those things what led me, my mindset, my values, to where I was totally depleted and couldn't get out of bed. So through that journey, I started to learn the hard way from my own inner work. Lots of different books, workshops, trainings, therapists, coaches, you name it, to try to heal myself from the inside out. Right. And so through that journey, as I was on the front lines, I realized how critically important some of these tools I learned from myself were to help the very doctors and nurses and staffs and medical assistants trying to barely survive themselves while also take care of other people, these patients that were also petrified and didn't know what to do. And I started implementing and using some of these tools and helping and supporting my staff, the other physicians. And it, one, allowed me to better take care of me so I could show up better and lead better in this time when no one had the right answers. And two, allowed me to better support everyone around me, including also my family and friends and loved ones, everybody who was struggling, because this was a big challenge that we all were facing together with no clear answers and a lot of uncertainty. And so through all of that, even before then, even before the pandemic hit, I had started having this feeling like there's something else out there that I'm meant to do. And I shared this with it in my TEDx talk. I shared this story very openly because many of us, I feel like, at times have this feeling this knowing inside of us that we're meant for something different or we're meant for something more, whether it be a relationship, a career choice, or where we live, whatever it is. But there's no clear evidence or logic or reasoning to back it up. And often, as a result, we end up just dismissing it or neglecting it or ignoring it altogether. And so, what led me to my pivot, as you asked so beautifully, is realizing this is what I meant to do. And I'm meant to help people in an even more deeply transformative way than I can as a traditional, conventional medical doctor. And so, because practicing in this other way to be able to guide people to now speak and coach and work with clients and organizations all over the world, I can pull together all my different skills and experiences and expertise that bridge both the science and the spiritual, that also bridge medical, traditional medical, and also alternative and complementary, and pull it all together in a way that really gets to the root cause and helps healing at the deep level that I had to do for myself first.
How incredible. I was wondering if you could share with us how your family reacted to your decision when you chose to step away from the medical field.
Not well. It's a very poignant question that you ask, because I actually, in the TEDx, I also share right before, a year before I left my job as a doctor and a medical director, I also called off a wedding.
Yes.
Both of these decisions were incredibly hard and difficult. And I shared them in my TEDx talk because a lot of us are secretly and silently suffering with these decisions and these feelings and feeling so alone, and don't think that it's okay to follow what our truth is. And so, to be honest, my family still is very upset about both of those decisions, and there is a lot of tension and conflict, and part of it is because we come from different worlds, right? I have done so much inner work and deep healing with all of this, and unlearning and unprogramming, right? And choosing and becoming more aligned, becoming more me, to live my truth and stepping more into me as opposed to what I learned from my environment, that our values are just very different, right? And they are who they are because of their experiences. And there's nothing wrong with it. So there's no right or wrong here. It's just about what's right for each individual person. And that's what really I'm most passionate about in terms of the work I do. A lot of people I've noticed, the most successful, high achieving people that on the outside look like they have everything, and suddenly we turn around and we see their suicides and we don't understand it. And what is the reason, right? And you talk about joy for this very reason. It's because when we are not fully living our truth and living in a life that is aligned to who we are, that feels integritous to who we are, then there is going to be a level of emptiness and lack of fulfillment, and certainly lack of joy, because often what ends up happening is we get stuck trying to please other people, fulfilling other people's expectations or living out their standards. And I was doing that for a while with my family, right? And that's what I was doing, trying to be the good girl and trying to get their approval and their love. And I realized that they want the best for me. And even though right now they might not agree, and right now it was definitely the harder decision to make these choices and cause more conflict and rife in terms of my family, it's actually, I think, critically important for my own healing to step into my purpose and who I am, but also eventually for the healing for my family. Eventually, I know that we will all come around and it will heal, and it not just heal me and them, but also generationally in terms of some of the patterns that we have.
It's so interesting what you have just shared. And what comes to mind is a lot of the research that shows that when we suppress our true self, when we say yes, when we are called to say no to specific situations or circumstances, it takes a lot of courage. But some people do not necessarily have that courage. How do you see the mind body connection influencing health and well being, both from a medical perspective and a holistic viewpoint?
Oh my gosh. It's everything. And it's not talked about enough. I think at this point, most people have probably heard the terminology mind body connection. And in fact, mind, body, spirit, right? And I am currently in the process of actually writing a book chapter in an upcoming book called The Optimal Health for Leaders. And part of what I'm talking about in that chapter answers your question in terms of a lot of times, especially those of us who are busy, we have a lot going on in our lives, maybe families to take care of, jobs and careers, and all these different things. We just kind of end up managing to squeeze in the bare minimum when it comes to taking care of ourselves. And often that's really only hitting the physical realm. So the body part, right, of mind body connection, right? So there's the physical body. So we talk about diet and nutrition and exercise, and all those things are common things we talk about all the time. The things that are less talked about are so mental and emotional, and then even spiritual health and wellness. And all of them are so intricately tied and feed into each other, but also there's a cause and effect there too. For me, it's like having mind, body, spirit. Let's just keep it simple for now. If we just say those three things, it's like a three-legged stool. If you just have one, if you just take care of the body, and you have great nutrition and diet and workout and all those things, that's great. You have that one leg solid. But without the mind, which also, let's say for now, includes mental and emotional well being, and then the spirit, which is like purpose, who you truly are at the essence, without those two being solid, you might be just fine for a little while, but any big challenge and that chair can just fall over. It's not stable, it's not sturdy, right? And so that's the analogy I like to share that maybe can help people visualize the importance of all of it, because we can see more and more. Well, actually, said another way, so coming from a different angle, there is more and more evidence out there, science, quantum physics, you name it, tons of books and all these things that talk about the power of how we can actually, from our vibration, our energy level, the thoughts that we have, and where we're vibrating, right, in terms of our frequency, creating our reality. How could that be possible if there is no mind body connection? If that those two aren't so intricately connected that one can impact the other, right? And so it is actually so important when people are talking about thriving. I strongly believe in order to truly thrive, we have to thrive mind, body, spirit, meaning spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, in all of these realms in order to be whole as a person. A prime example are Olympians, right? There are so many Olympians that actually report being depressed, and even after they win the gold, feeling this emptiness, right? And being suicidal at times. Why is that? They're at the peak of their physical physique, right? If you were to put it that way. So, if that were enough for us to have wellness, to experience joy, to thrive, then that wouldn't be the experience, right? And instead, actually, when we harmonize the mind, when we get clear, when we are aligned with who we are, what we want, like what feels most aligned to us, alignment is a key part of all of this, I feel like, then there's harmony. What we're looking for, I hear a lot of people talking about the most common phrase is work life balance, right? And balance is great, but I think even better is harmony. And it's about all of these different pieces, mind, body, and spirit, or work and life, right? Harmonizing in a way that works together as opposed to against each other. And in order to do that, we need alignment.
I fully agree. And I use the same term, in fact, the work life harmony. And I was wondering if you could share some techniques or exercises for our audience on how they can actually strengthen their mind body connection and achieve that harmony.
Well, one of the first steps, so I have something that I call the 4A framework. So basically, just to keep it simple, easy to remember. And the first step for anything, if we're wanting to make any shifts in our life, is awareness. So many of us are so busy moving through our lives, doing the things that taking care of other people, taking care of our kids, running around, getting things done, and rushing through the day, that we're not even aware of what we're feeling in our body, when we're hungry, when we need to use the bathroom. And we're certainly not aware, or at least mindfully aware, of all the thoughts and the emotions that are running through our mind at any given day. Right. And so part of it, one of the I like to use simple techniques to start, because simple means more easily applicable and integrated. But simple also doesn't necessarily mean easy. I also have seen over and over again, the truth is often simple, right? And it takes mastery for us to simplify it in a way that then people can receive it. So whatever I share with you, these tools and techniques, they're going to sound super simple. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, it's going to be like, oh, that's too simple. Like, I can't see how that works. Maybe I've already done that, probably, is what some people might think. But at the same time, working with thousands of patients and clients all over the world, let me tell you, these simple practices, when you actually implement them, they make all the difference. They're like those seeds that we plant that all of a sudden form the foundation, and then it grows into this beautiful garden as we nurture it. And then this is where things become effortless and you start to get results, and you're not trying to convince yourself that you're feeling well or convince yourself that you're confident and worthy. You actually feel it deep down, and that's at the core of what I do. So with all that being said, the very first step is to pause. To pause, even just for a few seconds, to tune in. What's going on in your body? What sensations are you noticing? What thoughts do you notice in your mind, right? What emotions are arising? Because until we are fully aware of what's going on in our body in any given moment, and the patterns that we're running on default all the time, there's certainly no way that we can shift it, because the way that the human brain works, right? There's so much information coming at us. It's overwhelming. We have millions of bits of information coming in. If you were, even in this very moment, no matter where you are, if you actually were to be able to perceive consciously everything, the color of the screen, the little detail here, the word here, the feeling and the warmth and the temperature, all these different sensory inputs, your brain would fry. It would be overloaded. And so what happens is that our brain filters what we feel like is important to us, what it thinks is important to us, and then deletes and dismisses and generalizes everything else. And when that happens, then we're continuing to run these patterns over and over again, and we don't even realize it. We're doing things reflexively. Like, we don't even realize whenever we put our hands together, we always put the same finger over on top, or we're always doing this the same exact way. What else do you think is happening in your mind? You're always having the same types of thoughts, same kind of questions, same type of focus that is creating the same types of results, not only in your body and your health and your wellness, but also in your relationships, in your job, anything else that you're doing. And so this is so almost painstakingly simple, but this is the very first step, to just pause and just notice. What are the emotions you're experiencing? What are the thoughts that you're having in your head, in your mind? And what are the bodily sensations? And then what patterns do you notice? And then the second A, I would say, is acceptance. Sometimes we become aware of certain things, and especially many of us who like to grow and learn and have done a lot of personal development work already, we may think, oh, I should know this already, or I shouldn't be positive. And there's a level of judgment or self-criticism in order for us to shift anything, right? You were talking about, like, how can our viewers apply some tools that can help them essentially shift into a more wherever they're wanting to be, even more aligned, even more harmonious, even more joyful. We have to first accept what is. We have to first accept where we are, how we feel, even if we're not proud of it, even if we wish it were different. And acceptance is different than acknowledgement. Acknowledgement means you're aware it's there. Acceptance means you're fully accepting it without judging it, without trying to make it go away, without criticizing it, without any emotional charge. And actually, this is just information. How beautiful. I get this information, and now I can do something about it. and decide, well, if I notice that I'm constantly thinking about the past and what I should have done, and I'm noticing that that's causing me a lot of stress in my body, and then I feel all this tension, and then my stomach gets upset, and then I feel tension and I'm uncomfortable throughout the day, and then I reach for, and I'm feeling exhausted, and then I reach for coffee over and over again because I'm trying to get through the day, right? Well, okay, can we look at all these patterns and see what's at the root of it? And perhaps if you choose, you could say, well, I notice that every time I have these types of thoughts, this is the pattern that happens. This is what happens. I start to wear myself out. I start to become more depressed and hopeless, or frustrated or angry, and I show up less better, or I'm more reactive with my partner. Well, okay, let's take a look at how can we reframe those thoughts? How can we shift our focus even just a little bit, right? I call them 2 millimeter shifts. This is why simple tools work better, because especially with so many of us and so much going on in our lives, a boat or even a plane, right? If you just shift it 1 degree, 2 millimeters, let's say, you'll end up in a completely different destination or country, right? And so these are the types of shifts that actually make a difference, because those are the ones that are more sustainable. And so it's awareness, acceptance, then address, meaning what do you want to do to shift it? And that's focused on the future. And these are these 2 millimeter shifts. So especially I want to encourage people, make it easy for yourself. Let it be easy. Let it be simple. So many of us, I'm sure, are going to be like, oh, that's too easy and that's not enough. And we want to rush the process and make the change and all of a sudden be able to run a marathon tomorrow when we've never run before, right? We're going to end up injuring ourselves if we do that. So instead, can you be gentle and give yourself just a 2 millimeter shift? This is how we create habits. There's so much study on that. Like 2 millimeter shifts, that is doable, that is realistic, that feels good for you, is aligned with who you are, that then you can practice and then stack on the next piece. And this is what I work on with a lot of my clients, because to guide them, and I can see the bigger picture and help them determine these next 2 millimeter shifts. And then all of a sudden, I just talked to a client yesterday. She's very successful business owner, all these things. And when she told me, we first started with, what is your 6 month vision? What would you want your experience to be like? Because we have to have a vision and align ourselves with that to even have a chance of getting there, right? And so many of us forget to think about, we might have a business strategy or a business goal, but we might not have a vision for who we want to be and what we want to experience in our life, right? And so she had created this just a few months ago, and she was like, actually, I don't know that I feel comfortable writing this down, because I don't really believe, like I can feel like I don't think it's possible in even 6 months. And I acknowledged her and I said, I totally understand. And let's just put it down and see where you go. We kind of did these ratings and she answered a bunch of questions. And just yesterday, she answered the questions and she started crying, because she's like, oh my God, she's already there in less time with less effort. And she was like, I know you told me it could be effortless and it could be easy. I really didn't believe you. But oh my God. And now she's like, what else is possible? Right? Her life has totally changed. And so I share that because I want everyone to know it is these little steps, especially when they're done in a way that's aligned with who you want to be and where you want to go. That is what makes a difference. So let it be easy, let it be simple, and give yourself grace and accept yourself, even if it's not perfect, because that is actually what makes all the difference.
So beautiful, everything that you have shared. And what comes to mind is really that it's about the journey, on the process of shifts and evolutions and transformation. We often have so much focus on the end goal that we forget that it's also about embracing the journey, having joyful moments along the way rather than just celebrating at the end. As you were describing earlier, that's why often some individuals that even achieve important milestones, big objectives that you would think, wow, they're at their peak, as you've mentioned before, they should be the happiest person in the world. They're not, because often we put so much importance on that final point being achieved and bringing us happiness. And we realize that we forgot to be happy and find joy along the way.
Absolutely. And we hear this all the time. It's about the journey, not the outcome, but often a lot of us who care about the outcome then kind of roll our eyes like, but we want the outcome, right? So I've had multiple clients recently that, for example, I'll give a couple examples. One, like she really was totally unhappy, toxic marriage, and but has a child together and not sure what to do. And she was feeling less and less like herself, playing smaller and smaller, hiding herself. And she was like, I feel like I need to make a decision, but I've been trying to make the decision for over a year and I can't. And I want help making this decision. And then I have a couple other clients who have been feeling like, another one who was trying to lose weight. And like, I've been trying to lose weight. I've tried it all. I've tried it all. Right. But nothing's working. So, for example, the divorce one, I told her, okay, I totally hear you. I understand. You want to get clarity on this decision. And actually, for us to get there, what I'm going to suggest is that we let go of trying to make the decision. And same thing, we let go of trying to lose the weight. And then, of course, they don't like it when they hear that. But this is also when all of a sudden, as we're taking these steps, all of a sudden the clarity comes. Because sometimes when we are so focused on the outcome, we want it so badly, we're so attached, we're actually pushing it away. The attachment creates this energy, and there's science behind that and frequency and all that stuff. But without going into all that, when we are so attached to that outcome and we're trying to force it and make it happen, whether it be a decision, whether it be trying to lose weight, whether it be trying to get that next job or land that next opportunity, sometimes we are clinging on so tight that we are basically cutting ourselves off from the possibility altogether. And I can go into the science of all of that, but without doing so, these several examples over and over again, all these clients, the moment we let go for a little while, I told her, give it a few months. We're just going to let go. We're not even going to focus on trying to make this decision. And in fact, we're going to take care of these things one step at a time. And I said, give me at least 4 months or 6 months of not thinking about this decision. We're not going to try to make it. And all of a sudden, in less than 3, it already came absolutely clear, more congruent and aligned than she actually was. And she's already moving forward and feeling better about it. So often it's actually when we let go and surrender, we can have this clear vision that we really feel passionate about, that is important to us, that we care about, and we know why we want it, but not be attached to it. And I want to make the distinction. There's a difference between non-attachment and detached. Sometimes people get kind of conflate the two and get confused and think, well, if I'm not attached, then I'm detached. That means I don't care about this outcome. No, that's not what I mean. When we say non-attachment, it means you know what it is that you want. You have a clear vision of what you want to experience, who you want to be, what this outcome is, what your picture is. You can almost picture it like a movie, ideally, right? And then you're able to let go of the how, the when, and you're not so clinging on to it that you're trying to force it and make it happen. That's ironically when it will all unfold and perfectly click into place, and also even better than you can even imagine. And I can tell you hours and hours of stories that corroborate all of this.
Well, how about you share some of the science behind this?
There's a lot of science to show what I just talked about in terms of essentially creating your reality, right? And it's about consciousness and frequency. We're all energy at the core of everything. And there are great books and resources out there. David Hawkins, for example, did research where he measured the frequencies of different emotions. Specifically, in quantum physics, there are different studies that have been done. A really great book by a dear friend of mine, Dr. Larry Farwell, is called The Science of Creating Miracles, which, if you're interested, will go into so much more detail. There's quantum physics studies, for example, where depending on, it's called the observer effect and also the double slit experiment, which many of you may have heard of. And if not, you can look up YouTube videos that describe it. Basically, what we anticipate, what we expect to see actually is what unfolds in terms of what happens, whether something is seen as a particle or a wave based on this particular experience. And so to tie it back to what I just talked about, when we are so like attached to something. And often, the more we care about something, the thing, ironically, that happens is that often when we really care about something, an outcome, a result, something that we want in the future, we hold on and grip on even more tightly, right? And it's because we care so much because it's especially important to us. But when we do that, first of all, that's operating at a lower frequency. And often that is coming from a place of fear and uncertainty. Often we grip on so tightly and we try to make it happen and try to overanalyze or think about how do we make it happen, and almost from a forcing energy, because truthfully, we're afraid it's not going to happen. If we truly believed from a higher frequency, right, that we would be able to experience this, that it's already done, the energy with which we approach something would be very different. So imagine that you have a water hose and then you're gripping it tighter and tighter and tighter. How well does the water flow through there? How well will your energy and your vibration and your frequency translate? Not very. And so basically, we don't realize it, but when we're trying to force something and we're focused so much on that outcome to the point where really it's operating from a place of fear and scarcity and uncertainty, that's actually keeping it away. Because really, what we're saying is in our energy and what we're expecting is that, oh, it might not happen. So I got to really make sure it does happen. Right. And so, in terms of bringing it back to the observer effect and the double slit experiment and all that stuff, we think we are focusing on what we want, but we're actually focusing on the fear of not getting what we want, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So, in other words, what I'm hearing you say is that it's all about the beliefs that we create in our minds and in our hearts, and the emotions that come with believing that the outcome is already within reach. Is that an accurate summary, if you wish, of what you just shared? Just to re-emphasize what I've captured from what you've shared, that ultimately we have to almost imagine things already happening and being part of our world rather than being afraid that they will not. And it's that belief that it will happen that actually make it appear in our world much faster. Correct?
Oh my God, yes. So imagine, so when we believe something will happen, let's say, for example, if we already truly believe we're going to get the job, how would we behave? Are we going to think about it all day long, trying to figure out how to make it work, trying to think about what angle to take or how do we answer these questions? Or will we continue to go about our day assuming that it's already happened? It's a very different energy to combat through. And it's different emotions, different thoughts that we have, different ways that we act, different, it affects how we show up, right? And so, exactly, when we truly believe it, often we're trying to convince ourselves from here down. We're trying to convince ourselves from the mind. That's a lot of times people say affirmations in the personal development world, which is great in some ways, but sometimes we're actually, if we don't believe it, it's not helpful because we're trying to convince ourselves from here down, from the mind down, from the consciousness down. But really, when we fully believe it, it's within us, it's embodied, it's integrated, it's just a truth, and we don't question it, there's no doubt, and we stand solidly congruent in it. And so another tool that our viewers can practice and play with. I talked about when you have a vision and you have clarity on what you want, to kind of bring all the science together and help yourself create it and make it a reality. Get so clear on it that you can close your eyes and visualize it like a movie, that you can feel the feelings that you would have imagining it's already done, it's already happening, and the thoughts that you would experience, the images that you would see, and practice that and getting aligned with that and making it so real that you can almost taste it. That's when you truly believe it. You feel like it's already happening, and that will impact how you show up, what you do now, and also create it and manifest it in your reality.
I also understand that you help clients find their purpose and tap into their truest selves and find their highest purpose. What advice would you have for someone listening that may be struggling to find their purpose today?
One of the first things often is that we haven't given ourselves permission fully to be ourselves. And often we don't even realize that we're there. Often we're so used to doing what we're supposed to, what we should, what we've learned and taken on as what we're supposed to do, as to be a good mom, to be a good daughter, to be a good partner, also to be a good coworker or whatever it is, that we have lost sight of what we truly want, who we truly are. And so the first step is to identify in each moment, where are the places that you are doing something because you feel like you should or you're supposed to? Versus, are you truly doing something from a place of desire and feeling lit up and feeling drawn to it, feeling called, feeling pulled to something from a deep place of desire that's coming from your inner truth and your inner wisdom? Because so many of us have lost sight of that. And that's why it's not clear what our purpose is. And also, our purpose is not one thing. Sometimes we can think that purpose is this big thing, this one thing that I'm wanting to achieve, and I can't find it. But actually, the more we try to look for it, then just to make my point that I just made earlier, the more we actually feel more confused. So to really truly find our purpose is first to get to know ourselves even more. And to get to know ourselves is to slow down enough to notice, well, am I doing this? Am I eating this? Am I making this decision? And am I taking this action or not taking this action or saying this because it's truly me and what's coming from within? Or is it because I'm used to doing it or because I feel like I should or supposed to? And I'm trying to fit some sort of paradigm and expectation. And once we kind of become more aware of that, then we can start to tune in more. What is it that I am moved to do or say or be? What is it that truly lights me up and what is my truest desires? And then as you take those little steps, all of a sudden it'll be, oh, wow, I know exactly what it is that I want. That's my purpose. That's my calling. It's not trying to write it out, figure it out, and do all this research. Then suddenly you find your purpose. It doesn't really work that way.
Well, thank you. There's a lot of research we've been doing around how people experience joy around the world. We currently have data on over 38 countries. And what we've come to realize is that the individuals that have found their purpose and have had that clarity are actually experiencing higher levels of joy and life fulfillment. So, thank you so much
Mm.
for sharing those insights to hopefully help some individuals find their path to greater joy. There's another question that I had for you. Do you see a distinction between happiness and joy?
Yes, I love that. To me, happiness is like sadness and like some other emotions that can be fleeting, right? Happiness often, at least the way that most people use the term, can be a fleeting, momentary thing. It's an emotion, it's a feeling. Often, when people are talking about joy and bliss, it's coming from a deeper place and it's more like a fuller experience, right? And I imagine when you're talking about joy, it's not that fleeting up and down emotions that are typical and it's part of the human experience, but joy and bliss is what comes from, it's the byproduct of living your truth and being your fullest self and being fully aligned and following what lights you up and allowing yourself to follow your purpose even if it may not make sense. That's the experience of joy that I feel like washes over you and becomes a part of you and becomes part of your being. And to me, that's the distinction between happiness and joy.
What do you think we need to do collectively to bring more joy and harmony into our lives and in our communities?
Give ourselves and each other permission to be exactly as we are, which said another way means letting go of judgment, letting go of shoulds and supposed to. Because I truly believe, and this is at the core of the work that I do now and why I left my medical practice. I truly believe we each have a unique light within us. We each have a unique essence of who we truly are that makes us who we are, that we often lose sight of because of societal standards and expectations and things like that. And when we can really learn to love ourselves fully, accept ourselves fully, and give ourselves permission to shine that light, to step more fully into our power, that's when we can share our unique gifts, our unique wisdom, experience, and skills with other people. And that's how we will have an even greater impact in the world when we are shining our brightest light, being in our fullest power, most authentically and congruently. And that's how we help each other by first accepting ourselves and each other exactly how we are, without judgment, without trying to make different, and honoring our differences, actually, to see the gift in each and every one of us.
I love that, Lisa. And for listeners that may want to get in contact with you, learn more about your work, what is the best way to go about it?
So you can find me, Lisa Yeung MD, Yeung is how you spell it. So Lisa Yeung MD on all the platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. So I would subscribe to those. And also lisayoungmd.com is my website. And I would invite all of your viewers to join the newsletter because I share more tips, more information. And you can also find my TEDx there. And really, this is a lifelong journey, right? This is a message in terms of living our truth and giving ourselves permission to be who we truly are and being fully aligned, that I think is so important that we're not taught. And so it's my mission to really share more and more people so that we can really be our truest selves. And so find me at lisayoungmd.com, sign up for the newsletter, follow me on those platforms at lisayoungmd, and I'll share with you even more tips, tools, and resources.
Wonderful. Lisa, it's been such an immense pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you for sharing your journey, for all your wisdom, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you.